Sunday. Welcome on in Fantasy Life right here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you for the next couple of hours. Excited to be here, Adam, on this Sunday. You've got softball all done. I watched the Mariners yesterday. It's a good weekend. How you doing?
Yeah, it's a much better weekend for my New York Mets than your Mariners. But hey, at least you got out to a game. You know, it's always good to go to baseball games. I've only been to 2 this year. I typically go. I mean, it depends, obviously, with work schedule. But I'm hoping to go to a game potentially this week because we know as we get to September, it's not going to happen.
I was going to say, you usually go to more, I feel like, by this point in the year. But now the Mets are, everyone wants to go to a Mets game. So I feel like last year you were like, oh, yeah, these tickets, they're a little bit cheaper. And now everyone's like on the, which is fine. You're on the Mets bandwagon. Everyone wants to support them. But
no,
you got to get to
Mets
more.
Bandwagon.
No,
are you kidding
not
me?
you. Everyone else getting your tickets. Not you.
Yeah, you are right. The ticket demand is a lot more difficult. They're getting sellout crowds almost every game. But but it's easier, I guess, maybe during the week. Obviously, you typically like to go on weekends, but looking to maybe go this week. And September will be tough with fantasy football, but if they are there in October again, I will be there for the postseason. I think I went to 3 postseason games last year, I believe.
You went to a lot. I was quite jealous. I was living vicariously through you because I was like, oh, the Mariners, they're not gonna make it there. And now is the time, Adam, where they're starting, their little downhill slide, which is always expected once June and July start coming up. But, shout out to the Angels. By the way, I looked back at some of the tickets I had. I have not gone to Angel Stadium to watch the Mariners play. Every time I've gone, they've lost. So maybe it's a me thing, Adam. Maybe I just need to not go to those games. Julio gets hurt yesterday, but I did get to see Cal Raleigh, Big Dumper, hit 2 home runs. So that was pretty sick. He's awesome.
Yeah, Riley is on my top fantasy team that's playing for big money. And boy, what a pick. He has been, like, every day I'm like, all right, this can't continue. And then he just keeps crushing the ball. So hopefully your Mariners turn it around to give you some joy this summer.
They won't. It's fine. I already know. So it's so fun being a Mariners fan too, because people, when you tell people that, it's not like a rivalry thing where people, want to talk crap about your team because it's the Mariners. So everyone just looks at you like, oh, like it's almost pity. They're like, that sucks. And I'm like,
well, I'm rooting for you. I have no ill will towards Seattle. I like them.
We'll see.
Ken Griffey Jr. going back to then. So, I'm hoping you guys turn it around in the wide open American League. So you still have a shot.
Exactly. It is wide. By the way, shout out to, I just have to say this because, I went really early yesterday because, I thought about what you said. I'm like, okay, I really actually do want to sit and watch this game because that was the first Mariners game I've been to this season. So I was like, I'm not going to get up a ton during the game. No, I ate a ton of food. I got there at like 5 o'clock. Game started at 6:40. So I did the lap around the stadium. I had corn. We got nachos. We got this cookie bouquet. 15 cookies, Adam. I was going left and right. It's almost like the box of cookies I told you to get at whatever.
Yeah, City Field.
Yeah, City Field. And I was going to the left. I was like, hey, lady, do you want one of these cookies? She's like, no. I'm like, sorry. I was just trying to give them away at some point. Great food, though, at Angel Stadium. I do have to say. Nacho helmet. It was like 3 pounds of nachos.
That's awesome. some goal for me during the future, whether it's retiring or winning the lotto or coming across a big sum of money, is just traveling to different stadiums.
Yes.
And even for football too, just different venues. Like everyone's like, oh, you'd be bored if you weren't working. I'd find plenty to do. I'd travel everywhere, stadiums, everything. So hopefully I come across that big sum of money soon.
Yeah, let me know too. Don't forget about us here. Yeah,
what's your name again?
Stop.
Oh yeah, Kendall. I remember
you're like,
That's
right. We've got some. Aaron Rodgers got some money over the weekend though, a little bit. I will say a little bit, but Adam, it's almost like a finally thing. I've been saying it's the worst kept secret in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers finally has a new home, right? He is going with the Pittsburgh Steelers, did sign a 1-year deal. Looks like it's worth $13.65 million, $10 million guaranteed, and potentially up to $19.5 million with incentives. But again, Adam, this was one of the things where it was either that he was going to retire or that he was going to continue playing, and it looked like he was going to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Started off the offseason where he almost wanted to, go and play with the Minnesota Vikings, but they very much said, JJ McCarthy is our quarterback. We're going to go in this direction. So now Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year deal, and it was the last and the biggest piece for the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of have to put together. So now Aaron Rodgers over there, Look, Adam, we're not going out of our way to draft Aaron Rodgers in fantasy football. I think everyone listening kind of knows that, but at least it's one of these pieces where we can now see the entire offense, say, okay, how does this affect DK Metcalf? How does this impact Freiermuth? All that other stuff. What did you think about his signing here?
Like you said, we all knew this was coming. It was just, when is it going to happen? Just seeing how the Steelers approach the quarterback position in the draft, free agency, we all knew this was going to happen. There was really nowhere else for Rodgers to go. So I just assumed this was happening, and they basically had this like handshake agreement, like, okay, we know you don't want to be around until training camp comes. Fine, we'll let you do your thing. He had those comments when he went on McAfee's show where he kind of opened the door that maybe he wouldn't play, but we all knew it was going to happen. So if you have been doing best ball drafts, I'm assuming almost everyone approached it with the thought that Rodgers was going to be on Pittsburgh, because it was pretty obvious. And, now it's official. Great. And we can move on, and we don't have to deal with that story. Is he going to sign today? Maybe he's going to retire. Maybe he's going somewhere else. We pretty much knew all along it was going to be Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you don't want to keep talking about it. There's not. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing with fantasy, though, is like you're not going out of your way, right? He's not someone that you say, oh, I want him, as my second quarterback in a super flex league. I still think that even coming off the season he had last year, it was bad. Like, you look at his EPA per dropback, he was 19th, success rate 24th, completion percentage over expected, he was 30th. So we can kind of look at him, Aaron Rodgers, and say, all right, his best years are probably behind him, but he's still going to be able to throw a catchable ball to DK Metcalf. We can probably expect a couple Hail Marys that go his way, because that's always what's been happening. But again, he's not someone that you're going to go after and say, yeah, I feel really good about him in this Steelers offense. He's more of a streamer, late round quarterback option for 2025. It's along the lines of guys like, Matthew Stafford at the end, Geno Smith, some of those guys are probably where he's going to be going now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to be targeting him, even in a super flex league, because we know that Pittsburgh wants to run the football. They play at a slow pace, and Rodgers does too, because Rodgers will go up to the line of scrimmage, check everything out, clock is running. So you're not going to see a ton of pass attempts. You hope that for DK Metcalf that this will help him, the play action, the deep ball. They spent a lot of money on DK Metcalf. I know everyone's worried about the Arthur Smith offense and everything, but you have to think that when you pay Metcalf all that money, that you're going to get him the football. And we saw Rodgers working out with him a couple months ago. So I think that's the one guy who you're probably, I guess it's tricky for fantasy. I mean, to me, he's like right around wide receiver 24, 25. I would take him off the board. You might be able to get him as your wide receiver 3. He really hasn't lived up to expectations for DK Metcalf. I mean, very well as a Seattle fan. I feel like in fantasy every year we're taking him in that 15 to 20 range, and we're left disappointed. I mean, last year partly was Jackson Smith and Jigba surpassing him, which we kind of knew what was going to happen. But 10 touchdowns in his second year, 12 in his third, and he hasn't come back to that level. So it is a new offense. He is the number one now. He wasn't last year, even if it is a run-based, slow-paced offense. But I think you could get surprise numbers from Metcalf this year.
Yeah, he has been disappointing. Like in the NFL, like as a Seahawks fan, and then as a fantasy football manager, it's those wide receiver 2 numbers that you just know how talented he is, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna spend on him. His ADP has always been pretty expensive, but then giving you the wide receiver 2 finishes is not something that you've ever really been super excited for. So I'm with you there, and that's the other part of the Pittsburgh Steelers, is that they've relied on that approach of we're going to run the ball a lot, and we're going to pay a lot for our defense. So with Rodgers now here, there's like two ways you can look at the situation. You say, okay, the Steelers again are, going to utilize their defense, have a run heavy offense. And then here comes Aaron Rodgers. The other side of it is, okay, he attempted the second most passes in the league in 2024. And again, it wasn't pretty over there with the Jets, but maybe they open up their offense a little bit more. They say, hey, we've got DK Metcalf. He is more of this dynamic weapon that we can finally utilize, even though they they did have George Pickens. That's the other part of it. Like they did have George Pickens. So I think it's an interesting fit with DK Metcalf and Rodgers schematically. And I think that no matter what, he's going to be peppered with targets because again, George Pickens isn't on the team anymore. So when you look at it just from a volume perspective, it's going to be I'm not opposed to drafting DK Metcalf right now, Adam. Like I'm just not. And he's a little bit cheaper than in previous years. So I'm kind of okay with it actually going into this year.
Yeah, for me, I'd say he's not a target. I did a recent draft where I got him as my wide receiver 3 in round 5.
See, that's good.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And that might be the prevailing sentiment that people are going to be like, I really don't want Metcalf on Pittsburgh. But again, as a wide receiver 3, he is the number 1, even if it is not the most prolific passing offense. You have to figure he's going to get the bulk of the targets there in Pittsburgh when they do throw.
You would think, right? I mean, I was looking
they just don't have much.
They don't have it. And I was looking at his numbers and I'll go through them again. But when we look at our projections, I think he still came out again, Aaron Rodgers, this is why we say you're not going to go out of your way to draft him. And everyone listening to us right now kind of knows that. But I think he came out with QB 28 numbers. Yeah, overall with the fantasy points. So right now, Dwayne McFarland has him for 325 completions, 63% completion percentage, 3,518 yards, and then 24 total touchdowns through the year.
Yeah, he had 28 last year, but as you alluded to, he passed 583 times because the Jets obviously playing from behind and passing a bit where we really don't see that happening with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is probably going to do what they typically do, that 9-10 games as they do under Tomlin and make the playoffs, go through stretches where they look good, go through stretches where they look bad. But yeah, that sounds realistic. I would say, little lower touchdown passes compared to last year.
Are you more inclined to draft Jaylen Warren, Caleb Johnson than if we put all 3 of them in front of you and we said, okay, you got a choice between DK Metcalf at cost, Jaylen Warren at cost, Caleb Johnson at cost, who would you be gravitating towards more right now?
I'm actually fine with all of them. Okay. I mentioned Metcalf's price. I think it's fair right now. And the running backs really comes down to what's on your roster at that point in the build that you present. So, I typically have gone light on running back early. I like to get that one bell cow back early, then load up on receivers. And I think this year, too, when you look at the running back landscape, there's some really good running backs that are going later on. So if you can get that one, because really the goal for me is I'm trying to find an RB2 to put in my lineup. I'm going to I played a lot of PPR leagues, so I'm going to go heavy wide receiver, and I'm going to take a bunch of shots at the running back 2 position, and hopefully one of them hits. Hopefully 2 hit. May give me some depth, and maybe I can flex one. I also play in a lot of leagues with 2 flex spots as well. So there's good opportunity at the running back position this year. Some of these guys don't look like they're going to get big workloads early in the season, but some of these rookies could be big impacts in the second half, especially as injuries occur.
That's why I like both these running backs too. And I'm still in on Jaylen Warren. And maybe that's something, in a couple months when we go through training camp, I look back and I say, all right, I'm going to change my tune on this. But right now I still really like Jaylen Warren in this offense. And if you're a drafter like me, and I want to say like us, Adam, where we kind of tend to go 0 RB, or at least I really like to do that. This backfield, you've got 2 talented running backs that right now, at least in June, beginning of June, are priced as these RB3s. And so that's the other thing that we want to do, Adam, when we're in these drafts, is looking for these third running backs, these RB3s that we can take that could give you RB2 upside. And I think that's what you get with both of these guys. It's going to be, again, I told you the stat earlier, but it's this run heavy offense that's always been what the Steelers have done over these past few years. So I'm good taking shots on either of them. If I'm unable to get the rookie, then I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, I want a little bit of Jaylen Warren, but I think I might be pretty evenly split. If not for right now, and I looked at my exposures, I've got a little bit more on Jaylen Warren just to start the summer, just to see how it looks. But you're still at the price that they're giving you and the upside that they offer. I really like taking a shot on both of them.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well. So you basically are not deterred from last year when all those early running backs hit. You're just gonna go back to what's worked.
Why would we learn? Why would we learn from that, Adam? There's this one thing I will say. in recent drafts, and again, it's June, so like everything shifts once August, July, August start to hit and more drafts start coming in. But I have found myself doing the anchor RB approach. So I've gotten, it just depends on where I am though. So I drafted I did a couple on Saturday night, and cool Saturday night too, by the way. Yeah, just drafting on underdogs. I was sitting there.
That's what we do. There's nothing wrong with that.
I got Ashton Genty. There was one draft where I got Genty. There was one draft where I said I want a little bit of Jahmyr Gibbs. But then again, at that point, the anchor RB approach, if you guys don't know, is you take it's exactly how it sounds. You have an anchor running back for your team, and then I just go along the way the next 6 rounds. I make sure to get my wide receivers, maybe an elite tight end, depending on what kind of quarterback you're looking for. Pair them up with a quarterback. So I've been doing that a little bit more, Adam. Just it's the thing of just in case. We talk about recency bias all the time, and I try to not let that into my head too much, where I say, oh man, all these running backs that joined new teams last season. I mean, it was Saquon, it was Derrick Henry, it was Josh Jacobs. They really all hit. Even Aaron Jones, like they all hit. So I, in these early drafts, am making sure to maybe get one of those elite guys, and then coming back around, later to get my second running back. But I'm okay with that.
And especially if you're doing so many of these best ball drafts, you are going to switch it up. It will change when we come to do redraft leagues in July and August and leading up to the season. But I think it does depend where you pick. Did a recent draft where Jefferson was there at, I think, 5. I'm going to take Jefferson at 5.
Nice.
He's very dependable. And then, you figure it out. The thing is, when you know the player pool and basically where guys go, you can win with any approach. A lot of us have a blueprint that we like to use. But, one of the reasons why I always feel that I have success is I adjust to what's going on around me. Like if everyone is going to go heavy running back and push receivers down the board, I'm going to take them. If they do the opposite, I'm going to do that. So the key is just taking the value that's presented to you, and there's different ways to put the puzzle together.
We did a mock draft, which is live at fantasylife.com, so you guys can all go and check that out. But I think I took Ashton Genty in. Where did I take him? So I took Malik Neighbors. I had the 10th overall pick. So I took Malik Neighbors at 10, which I loved. I was like,
and
perfect.
Genty made it to second round?
Genty made it to the second round. And so I said, there's no way I'm going to look at Ashton Genty and go and not pick him.
That was an easy click.
Derrick Henry went ahead of him. And you know how much I love Derrick Henry. But I said to myself, there's absolutely, Derrick Henry, obviously a fan of the show. We love you. There's no way I'm ever, if you see that happening, it's because I accidentally queued him up and then I missed my pick. Like there's just no way I'm ever drafting Derrick Henry ahead of Ashton Genty. So I clicked immediately. You're right. It was no question. So you're right. It's just about, just watching the drafts around you, watch what other people are doing. But again, just to finish off, like Caleb Johnson's going in the 7th round and Jaylen Warren's going in the 9th round. So when I miss out on Caleb Johnson and I look at the 9th round running backs, it's Cam Scatterbo, who I love, Jordan Mason, who we'll talk about a little bit later. Also love him. Tyrone Tracy. Like I'm clicking Jaylen Warren's name more often than not if I need a running back in that 9th round.
I'm surprised you're not taking Scatterbo over him.
I am. I'm trying. I'm just trying to,
Oh, it's just that when you're in a draft and people know you, they're going to take him before.
Everyone takes him. Ian Hartitz wrote, shout out to Ian. He just does amazing work. And he wrote this article literally saying, like, I took Cam Scatterbo so Kendall couldn't have him.
Good job, Ian.
And it's like, that's what you have to do.
I would do the same.
Exactly. You had your guy who you had your rankings, and you were in a draft with him last year. I remember that vividly. He took every single one of your guys.
Yeah, I think Chase Brown would have been one of them. Although I think he didn't have a great, I don't know, I can't remember. I'm in so many leagues. I don't remember I barely remember where I finished last year.
I know. Cam Scatterbo, I'm trying to draft every single time. But the people love him now. He's the trendy pick. So it's not even fun. And I thought honestly, I didn't think he was going to make it into the 9th round until late July. But I rarely was able to get a discount on Cam Scatterbo after that draft.
Yeah, it happens, especially when you get to that range, because people are looking to get those running backs that could potentially surpass their value. And, I was going to say it's kind of similar to me last year with the Giants backfield, but it's really not, because Tracy was going way later. Because I preferred Tracy because I didn't believe in Singletary, but the gap is way closer with Tracy and Scatterbo this year.
Yeah, and they go Tracy. I already said it, but Tyrone Tracy is pick 106. Cam Scadaboo's 101. They
Yeah.
go in the same round, so it's
Yeah.
like I could see that 1A 1B situation unless Tyrone Tracy. We talked about a little bit, fumbling issues or just ball on the ground a little bit. That's where I could see it change. But yeah, we'll keep watching after it. Again, Aaron Rodgers, if you missed it, he did sign that 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers worth $13.65 million, $10 million guaranteed up to potentially $19.5 million. I have to check out these incentives and what that is for Aaron Rodgers. But we've got more quarterback news that we have to talk about, Adam, because disappointing. If you were drafting Anthony Richardson late in these best ball drafts, you might want to press pause on it. We're also going to go through quarterback projections. We're doing all of that next. All right, fantasy football fans. Sure, the NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it, and all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change, and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Oh, we've got you covered. You already know that by now. It's June. It's the beginning of June. Yeah, we're talking fantasy football because it's never too early to get you ready. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis here with you. We had one more piece of quarterback news over the week, Adam, and this one was not good. I wrote about this one in the newsletter, which you guys can go and find at fantasylife.com, 100% free in your inbox 7 days a week. But I said if he's been your sneaky, and it's also been me. I was hand up. I've been drafting Anthony Richardson a little bit late, but the late round quarterback target over the last few months, things are not starting well for him. Third year in the NFL, head coach James Steichen told reporters that Richardson is dealing with a shoulder injury, will not participate in the team's mini camp next week. And the more unfortunate thing, Adam, is that this is not a new injury. It's the he aggravated the right shoulder joint he injured back in 2023 that he had to go get surgery on, that he had to just have the whole season shut down. So their plan is that he returns, quote, at some point in training camp. Surgery is not in the plans, but there is no clear timeline for return. Danny Dimes season?
Yeah, it looks like it.
We
were eyeing that battle, figuring out what's going to happen there. And as you mentioned, Richardson's price dropped because we just didn't know what was going to happen. And this just puts him behind. I mean, look, if you're looking at the optimistic view, he shows up to camp, he's fine. But this has to be concerning for a guy that's had trouble staying on the field, also very physical player, runner. That's where he derives a lot of his fantasy value from. Actually, pretty much all of it, since he was under 50% completion percentage last year. So, yeah, this is more obviously for super flex leagues and even best ball. I mean, you might have taken him as your third quarterback, and now you might pump the brakes on that because you don't want to draft him and then find out, this is worse than we thought, and he's going to miss time. So yeah, this isn't good, obviously, if you've drafted Richardson so far.
No, it's not. And it's just one of those things where, to me, Adam, when I look at it, and I wrote this out and I said, okay, so he is, it gives Daniel Jones a little bit of a leg up. And I know Daniel Jones, people are going to look at, previous seasons and be like, oh, don't want any piece of that. And I kind of understand that. But then on the other side, Richardson, he's injured. He was benched for 2 games last season in favor of Joe Flacco, and he still finished the season with a 47.7% completion percentage, 264 attempts is what we came out with. So, I mean, Adam, it's just the other disappointing part is that he's missed 17 of a possible 34 games in 2 seasons. Like you and I talk about all the time where, okay, recency bias, we always want to, follow the injuries and make sure we're keeping mental notes of that so we know season to season. But this is one where he's shown, that he has just gone down with many injuries. It's been a little bit risky. And like you said, it's been baked into the price this offseason. But, now with this news, we're just going to have to kind of follow the timeline. For me, I look at it and I say, though, Daniel Jones is going to get more reps. And for me, he does have a leg up on Anthony Richardson if we're talking about this quarterback battle once it comes August, September. That's not to say that you should go out of your way to draft Daniel Jones, but if he takes advantage of it and he has a connection with Michael Pittman, if he starts to get chemistry with Tyler Warren, like they might look at that and just say, you know what? We're on the hot seat already and we need to win games. And if Anthony Richardson isn't 100% by July, that's going to be pretty brutal for the timeline.
It's also good for Jonathan Taylor in PPR leagues.
That's
He's
true.
going to catch more passes and also maybe not lose as many touchdowns at the goal line. We know Jones can run a little bit, but it's not in the same vicinity as Richardson. And the biggest problem for Richardson is, he didn't have a lot of development at college, and he came into the NFL at age 21. And the people who are on the optimistic side, like, well, we need to give him time, we need to see him develop. It's difficult when you're missing so much time. He played 4 games as a rookie, and people got excited. And where was he drafted last year? 6th, 7th, 8th quarterback off the board, because you saw the 4 games and you're like, oh, okay, if he plays a full year, how good is this going to be, especially since he's that running quarterback? And then we saw it just wasn't very good. And 47.7% completion percentage last year, 50.6% for his career, but it's 15 games. And that's the other factor is like, okay, we need to give him some time. We're in an era now where if you don't do it right away, that's it, you're done. And we've seen how that has backfired when you see what Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith and some of these veteran quarterbacks later on in their career. But now it's just a quick leash. It's like, okay, well, you're not getting it done. And it's a little unfair for Richardson, but you also have to be healthy so we can see you get that opportunity and find out if there's any growth there.
Yeah, I agree with it is disappointing how quickly, you have to go, especially last season. We talked about that when he was benched, and it was just like, to me, I didn't necessarily, I wasn't in line with that. But again, when you've got a coaching staff that's somewhat on the hot seat, you have to look around and say we need to start winning games. And so I also agree with with Jonathan Taylor. While he has also been injured, it's just one of those things where I think he's the 21st player off the board right now, and that might be just a little bit too late. But again, it just depends on what kind of build you're going for in your drafts. But when you look at some of the stats, he's a reliable workhorse. Like, that's the workhorse role that we always look at for fantasy football. So you look at him, 82% snap share, 75% attempt share last season. And really, Adam, if we look at the situation as a whole, that shouldn't change, right? They got DJ Giddens. I believe that was fifth round pick for them. So while I do, I do look at maybe Giddens as just in case, we never want injuries, but if Jonathan Taylor were to go down, he could maybe step up into a role. But there's other guys on that depth chart that we can look at. But for Jonathan Taylor going, 21st player off the board, I still like him. I haven't drafted him as much, but you're right. This situation, if it is Daniel Jones or whomever moving forward, it's good for him.
Yeah, I recently did in that draft where I told you I took Jefferson and came back and got Taylor as my RB1. Nice. Look, he was good last year. Played 14 games. It was a little bit of a slow start. He really finished the season strong. 4 straight 100-yard games to finish the year, including 177 and 218. And also had 8 games of his 14, 100 rushing yards. So in PPR leagues, yeah, we're a little bit worried. But I think with Daniel Jones in there, we know his tendency to kind of check down and throw short. That could help Taylor a little bit. And maybe he gets back up to the 40 receptions area, which would really help. But we know the yard's going to be there and the touchdowns. He's had double-digit touchdowns in 3 of his 5 years. In the 2 years he did it, missed some games. So I guess health is a little bit of a factor with him. He has missed time each of the last 3 years, 11, 10, 14 games. But, it should – you would think it would help him a little bit with Jones in there, because it means probably more goal line opportunities, not really losing him to Richardson, and also the potential for more receptions. And I guess it bodes well for the Colts receivers as well, because with Richardson in there, you always had trepidation about starting the Colts receivers every week. And also because they have so many guys that, it could be Pittman goes off, it could be Downs that go off.
Yeah.
And we saw those guys open, and Richardson often missed them. Like, they were wide open at times, and he would miss guys.
We would have conversations, Adam, and say, just don't start anyone.
Yeah.
Like, we would, we'd say, oh, Joe Flacco's in. Now we can talk a little bit better about, Michael Pittman. Like, that's kind of how bad, but that's what happens when you have a 47.7 completion percentage. Like, that's what happens. So for Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, Tyler Warren's the big one, where I know a lot of people are going to be thinking, okay, is this a little bit better if it's a Daniel Jones 2025 season than Anthony Richardson? But yeah, it's just, and to finish off with Jonathan Taylor too, like, the only I think in my rankings right now, I've got Achane ahead of him, Derrick Henry. I personally like Bucky Irving ahead of Jonathan Taylor, but that's where it stops. And then Josh, and then it's Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams kind of range. So that's kind of the only, and then of course the obvious top, CMC, Ashton Genty.
Would you consider still taking Richardson as your third quarterback, especially if you have like two decent ones?
Yeah, but the thing is, I think I'm going to wait to see how bad this injury is, though, because I don't want to take him, like, especially if I'm stacking, if I'm in a best ball draft and I'm looking around and I say, oh, well, Anthony Richardson's right here, and I have, a late Michael Pittman pick, I've got Jonathan Taylor, like, I'm okay with it, but honestly, for right now, Adam, I think I'm going to wait to see how, one, if it's really bad, or at least wait till training camp to see what happens, because I would be okay with taking Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, but I want to, if you're doing those best ball drafts, you kind of want to make sure it's the right one, especially even though they're the third quarterback. Like, it does matter on those games where you've got bye weeks and stuff for your quarterback. So I might wait till training camp. Are you comfortable with it?
I might still take the chance if the price drops severely, where maybe it's like the last 2 rounds and maybe you miss out on some of the other quarterbacks that you want. So. But yeah, and obviously for redraft, we have time to kind of figure that out because, again, we know with his rushing ability, especially as late as he's gone, this is different than last year. Last year, you had to pay a premium. I remember. I told you.
Oh, yeah.
I passed him in every draft. And one of my last drafts, I was like, what if Richardson hits? But I wound up taking him as the 10th or 11th quarterback off the board. So that was clearly a savvy room because everyone was passing him. And I said, okay, you know what? I don't have him. Maybe he hits. Let me get a piece of him. And I did, and clearly it did not work out.
Don't you hate when that happens? You're like, they're looking at you like, he took the bait. Because I do the same thing. At some point, I look around and I say, all right, I don't necessarily trust, this X player, but it's so late now where I could see, you tell yourself, you're like, there could be a path, right?
Usually, though, and that's one thing I've learned over the years playing all fantasy sports, like if you're not in on that player at that price, they have to drop a lot before you jump in because it's a trap most of the time, and it usually doesn't work out.
Yeah, but then once you get the discount, at least you're not spending up as much. You're not paying as much. So that's kind of what I tell myself.
I mean, I didn't pay the high price tag, but the bottom line is I had to replace him.
Yeah, it still sunk you. I get it. He's 16th round, which again, these drafts, he's gonna drop dramatically. Yeah. But he's 16th round right now. Daniel Jones at the end of the 17th. So really, people were going back and forth on them. If you think about that in best ball, like Daniel Jones still going in the 17th round is interesting.
If both were healthy, I would take Richardson.
Yeah,
I don't think, because we know if he can just improve the completion percentage. I'm not even asking for 65, like 60. You know what I'm saying? You just need to be a competent passer, but just because of what he can do on the ground. We know this. So especially since he was so cheap, but now with this injury, it does make you second guess because you don't want to take that third spot and then find out, that's it. He's going to miss, half the season, if not more. So
unless you end up taking 4. And again, this is underdog, so we're not talking about like super flex right now. We're talking about underdog drafts. But I agree with you because I was always the one these last few weeks where I just said, listen, yes, it's a quarterback competition, but Anthony Richardson is going to win it against Daniel Jones. But now with the injury, I'm a little bit more cautious just in drafting him. I want to make sure that the rehab goes well. I want to make sure that we just need to eventually see him in training camp, right, Adam? Because there's a potential, situation where, hypothetically we don't see him in training camp because they said they don't have a clear timeline. They're hoping he's back by then. If you don't see him in training camp, then that's Daniel Jones's job.
Oh, yeah.
Bottom line.
And maybe he just keeps it, Yeah. He just needs to be competent.
It's disappointing. It is so disappointing. But make sure you're looking at that, especially when you're drafting on underdog right now. We'll just have to wait and see with Anthony Richardson. We've got fantasy quarterback projections. We're going to do those presented by Bud Light here next. All right, I know some of you listening right now know a high school athlete that could really take their game to the next level, which we would all love to see here at Fantasy Life. So Premier National Sports is the team to help you through the entire process. They are a trusted recruiting and NIL resource for high school athletes and their families, and they are here specifically to help rising high school athletes take their game to the next level with not only personalized recruiting strategies, but also NIL education, which is so important right now. So if you're interested, want to say it again, or you just want more information, check out Premier National Sports now. All right, let's get into quarterback projections. We've been talking a lot of quarterbacks this morning, but that's what happens, Adam, when we've got news of Aaron Rodgers, we've got news with Anthony Richardson. Dwayne McFarland has his floor ceiling projections, which are always, listen, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming out at Fantasy Life, and we cannot wait to share that with you. But this is one of those things where you can check out the article at fantasylife.com, but we've got fantasy quarterback projections presented here by Bud Light. And so I wanted to go through just some of the names that I've seen him write up, because I love this, Adam, and just seeing, okay, what's the floor projection, what's the ceiling projection, and then a median projection for these quarterbacks. And I did want to, just because I've seen a ton of people go back and forth a little bit on Bo Nix, I'm curious where you have him. When I did my quarterback rankings, I still have him top 12, but it was one where when I wrote him out, I could feel that I might, I'm a little bit lower than consensus on him, and I could see myself, moving him. We've got months and months and months, well, months and months. We've got like 2 months until really things start going down here. But the archetype right now, he's an average passer with 30 plus rushing upside. That's what Dwayne has him at, and his floor projection 15.2 fantasy points per game, ceiling projection 23.8 fantasy points per game. And I know there might be a little bit of concern with just passing touchdown regression. 5.1% per attempt wasn't higher than the average starter over the last 3 years with 4.6%, but Nix was really good last season, and I think he outperformed what a lot of people expected of him. They did add, right? They got Evan Ingram. You still have Cortland Sutton in there. I would have liked and Pat Bryant. I would have liked maybe one more addition in the wide receiver room, but what are your expectations right now with Bo Nix?
I am also a little bit lower than the market.
Yeah.
I have him lower. And he was a guy that I picked up in a league last year, and he really helped me. I had some injuries at the quarterback position. I picked him up taking a chance and didn't think he would be the answer every week down the stretch, but he was. But yeah, I have not found myself getting him. Again, I like him, but I think there's a couple other quarterbacks that I like a little bit better that go later than him. So I'd rather pass on him and get a couple of those other quarterbacks that are going a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I had him QB 10 or 11, which again, like he's still a top 12 quarterback from what we saw last season. He finished the season as QB 10, had the 5th most fantasy points for a rookie quarterback. And again, like they were good. They made sure throughout the season between him and Sean Payton, they continued to just, change things throughout the year, and it showed improvement for him in 2024. Like the beginning of the season, it wasn't good, and then towards the end, we were like, okay, this guy, this could be, Bo Nix could be legit for fantasy football. So he was tied 25th in yards per attempt on vertical passes, had the 2nd highest rate of throws behind the line of scrimmage. Those are all the other things that I'm looking at, Adam, but I'm still liking Bo Nix. I don't take him as often as some of these other quarterbacks. Justin Fields is the other one where I'm taking him a lot, and I'm okay with the risk. And I think that's the one thing I always tell people and want people to know is that, yeah, Justin Fields is a little bit risky because we know he's not a good passer. When we talk about it, he's a bad passer with 50 plus rushing upside every single game. That's the one thing in fantasy. So his floor projection from Dwayne is 15.6 fantasy points per game. His ceiling projection is 23.7, but he's projected for 191 passing yards, 51 rushing yards per game. Like that's kind of the median, and that's okay for us because of the rushing upside. That's okay.
He's done it his entire career. You can say whatever you want about him. You could watch him and see some of the mistakes and the sacks that he takes that are bad. But the bottom line is, you mentioned it, 50 rushing yards per game in his career. He is going to run. He's going to have some massive games on the ground. You will be frustrated by the passing yards, but this is fantasy football. It doesn't matter how great it looks. The bottom line is he is usually a QB1 in points per game when he's on the field. So if I wait on my quarterback and he's there as the 12th, 13th quarterback off the board and I need a quarterback, I will gladly put him on my roster.
His median projection is superior to Bo Nix and Kyler Murray, because of their stronger dependence on passing touchdowns. Like that's the other thing is like, yes, it might just be a thing where it's not set it and forget it, but it's set it and then don't watch the Jets game, Adam. Like just don't watch, because you might be like, oh, I don't.
Yeah,
like
who's watching the Jets anyway?
Stop. I'm sorry, Jets fans.
No,
I'm sorry.
I like the Jets. I have a lot of friends who are Jets fans. I always root for them. I hope they do well.
I feel bad for them.
Oh,
like,
I do too.
Genuinely, it's getting to the point where I just kind of feel bad. So I almost hope for their happiness. I'm like, I hope you feel joy in 2025.
I would like to see that, but again, Fields has QB1 seasons. You know, he was QB5 one year, so he has that ability, and especially for what the cost is. Yeah, I mean, I was even taking him last year as my second quarterback, and he had a stretch there when he was the starter with Pittsburgh where he had some good games. But it looks like he should be the quarterback all year long. So, yeah, he doesn't have the ceiling of those top elite quarterbacks, but if you're able to build a really good nucleus, he can be beneficial, especially if you wait at the quarterback position.
I want to keep talking here about some fantasy quarterback projections, but we went through Bo Nix, we went through Justin Fields. I want to talk a little bit more about Dak Prescott and maybe some of the quarterbacks that people aren't necessarily considering because of seasons past. So we're going to continue going through this, but that was quarterback fantasy projections presented by Bud Light. Fantasy football's life. We're talking baseball. Adam's watching tennis right now.
I am not. Don't give out false information. I mean, the Mets don't play until 3.
Okay.
You know, and then basketball tonight, so.
Oh, nice. Wow, that Pacers game a couple days ago was crazy.
Unbelievable. I just don't know how the Pacers keep doing it. They trailed the entire game except for the last 0.3 of a second when Halliburton hit the shot. So, hey, look, it makes the finals more interesting. A lot of people thought the Thunder were going to win easily, so.
Mm-hmm. And you've got Roland Garros on, so you've got a lot of stuff to watch right now. You're good.
Yeah, lots.
Coco won yesterday. That was awesome.
Yes.
Amazing. Love her. What are we talking about? Fantasy football. It's fantasy life right here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. I did want to bring up again, these projections from Dwayne McFarland are live on the website fantasylife.com, and it's just I just really enjoy these because, again, floor projection, ceiling, median projection. I wanted to bring up because we don't talk, we talk about the Cowboys because we ask if you're okay, just as a fan. But Dak Prescott, we don't necessarily talk about him a lot as a quarterback to draft in fantasy football. But great, let's just say this, great passer with 10 plus rushing upside, right? 10 yards plus rushing upside. And I know people, when Dwayne wrote this out, he's like, okay, I'm going to get the eye rolls, saying Dak Prescott's a great passer. But I will say, Adam, he's averaged 261 yards per game over the last 3 years, which is higher than the projection that he has right now of 258. So you're taking into account the 2024 season, but I still, the floor projections, 15.3 fantasy points per game, ceiling projection 22.4 with a median projection of 18.4. Like that's not bad.
Well, he wasn't very good last year. Got injured, didn't play the whole year. They had a lot of issues, injuries along the offensive line, no running game. Because remember, by the time Rico Dowdle got going, that was when Dak was hurt. So he could be good. You're obviously not drafting him as your QB1. So maybe you take him with another quarterback, and maybe he winds up being the better one. Pickens helps, certainly, right? They haven't had that X receiver, a guy that can go deep and stretch the defense. So the threat of Pickens going deep is going to open up the offense, and you still have Ferguson there and CeeDee Lamb. So it's possible, especially if maybe the defense isn't as good and they're involved in some shootouts. The running game still has some question marks. So, there's a chance if he gets the volume, but I still think he's, outside the QB1 for sure. I don't think anyone's going to challenge that. But yeah, if everything breaks right for Dallas and he's healthy, we've seen it. When he gets those pass attempts, he's been a very good fantasy quarterback.
You like the George Pickens pickup because
Yeah.
that they've needed a wide receiver too there for a good amount of time. And we've seen Dak Prescott be able to put up good numbers when he has a solid wide receiver one, solid wide receiver two. So, and even in the rushing department, I know that people kind of forget, but even the projections are accounting for the 2024 season where everything was really it was just a down year, but projects for 11.6 rushing yards per game. That's below the 3-year average of 12.1. He reached 14 and 15 per game in 2022, 2023, respectively. So it sounds like you're a little bit out on him, but here's the thing: he's going in the 10th round, and honestly, he's kind of expensive. He's going right after Brock Purdy right now, going ahead of Jared Goff, going ahead of Drake May, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love. I might be a little bit lower on consensus.
Yeah, I think I'd take May ahead of him.
I would take Jared Goff ahead of him. Ooh, I'm questioning that a little bit.
Yeah,
you hear the hesitation in my voice.
That's closer. I probably would lean Dak. Again, we know what Goff's going to do, right? It's 30 touchdowns, not going to run much. He'll have his spike games and then other games where they run the football very well. But yeah, I think maybe people have moved him up because of the addition of Pickens. Certainly helps the offense and gives them another weapon. But yeah, he's in that range of quarterbacks where if you miss out on the elite and you take two quarterbacks where you go, okay, I hope one becomes an every week starter. That's typically what I do. If I don't get those, Burrow, Lamar Jackson types, I'm going to take two quarterbacks in the 10 to 20 range usually. And you hope early in the season, it might be frustrating, right? Because you might be starting the wrong guy. You hope that one emerges as your every week guy. Like last year, Baker Mayfield was, kind of in that category, fair. And then you start him every week. So if you take Dak and another one, you hope that one emerges as your every week starter.
He's QB 13 on Underdog right now. It's too high.
Yeah, I think it's the Pickens edition that boosted him up.
I have him QB 16. 17.
Yeah, that's more fair.
That's more my range there. But again, those are live at fantasylife.com. It is time for our favorite time of the day. That water cooler is coming up next. You already know what time it is. It is time for that Fantasy Life water cooler. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you right here on Fantasy Life, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, going through all the pieces of news that you might have missed over the last week here and getting you all caught up. We already mentioned Aaron Rodgers going over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We already mentioned the Anthony Richardson unfortunate injury, so that's also something that you have to pay attention to here. But you can get all the latest news and updates at fantasylife.com. We'll start there. You can subscribe to our newsletter in your inbox 7 days a week, 100% free. And then check out all of our articles that are also 100% free. So make sure you go over there, fantasylife.com. Let's get started with just contract talks with Terry McLaurin. I guess they're not going well, Adam. But I guess that's something that we always expected. They go back and forth. You and I are very much on the same page when we say, hey, get these guys paid. So that's what happened with Rashad Bateman a couple days ago. He was able to get paid, but Terry McLaurin, one of three players not attending the organized team activities. The other ones are Lattimore, Laramie Tunsil, but McLaurin's is contract related. So there were reports from Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports that talks have been, quote, minimal, and that Terry McLaurin has made it clear to the team that he's frustrated by the lack of progress on a long-term extension. So again, he's entering the final year of his deal. He has a base salary right now, $15.5 million this season, annual average 23.2. That ranks 16th behind Deebo Samuel. So probably when you look at that, you say, hey, can I get some more money here? I'm very much in the team of just let's pay these guys. Jaden Daniels had a phenomenal rookie season. Terry McLaurin was able to finally have good quarterback play, so that was good.
Yes, for sure. It resulted in him having his best season touchdown-wise, because if you look at the numbers that he had, they were very similar to the previous couple of years. The only big difference was the touchdown number. He had 82 receptions last year. The previous year, 79, 77, 77. So pretty similar. 1,096 yards was the third highest of his career, but it was the 13 touchdowns, the most since his rookie season when he had 7. So that was the Jaden Daniels effect, getting him more touchdowns in. Yeah, I understand the frustration for McLaurin. You want to get paid. He's going to be 30 in September when the season starts. So coming off that year, you want to get your money now.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So listen, when you look at it, he had, like you said, career best wide receiver 14 finish in PPR points per game last season. It was consistent, which is awesome. 11 top 18 PPR finishes, which went ahead of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Both had 10 for the best mark for wide receivers. So you look at that, Adam, you say, hey, just like the James Cook contract situation, they're like, hey, I want to get paid based off what I did last season because it was so dang good. And it's understandable with this one. So this is the crazy part, is that this is just what you need. And it's very obvious. You just need good quarterback play to consistently be a top wide receiver. But for Terry McLaurin, he previously posted wide receiver 29, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 30, and wide receiver 23 and 36 season long finishes in PPR. So it was great to finally see it come together in 2024. And I think my other thing, too, is that I know you're out on Deebo Samuel, so I'm not looking at this situation and saying, well, Deebo Samuel's going to take so much away from Terry McLaurin. He's right now our fantasy life consensus wide receiver 15, and I think that's pretty in line. Like, I think that's a pretty good place to have him. He's not going to be a top 12 wide receiver, but he definitely should be ranked inside the top 18, top 20.
Yeah, 14, 15 area is where I'd have him, and the touchdowns are going to be key. You mentioned, the 20, the 29. The reason is the lack of touchdowns, and then last year gets 13. So as long as the offense is similar to last year, and you'd expect it to, he's in a good spot.
You think Deebo Samuel, do you think it was like the father time, situation coming? It's the wide receiver age cliff situation, or do you think it was more of the injuries, the pneumonia mid-season, like or is it somewhere right in the middle where you're just not? I know you're kind of, I believe you've said you're not necessarily drafting Deebo Samuel this season. So do you think it's one or the other, or do you think it's just all of it combined that we should just be paying attention to?
It's tough to know because there were a multitude of factors last year. There's always that human element too, where you're going to a new team and you're refreshed and you want to prove your previous organization wrong. But the problem that I have with Deebo is that when you look from a fantasy perspective, he's really had one huge year. He's a great NFL player. He's fun to watch. He also is very physical. And as you get older, more risk for injuries. Again, you are going to a new team. Are they going to scheme them up the same way San Francisco did? But it's really that 2021 season that if you look at everything, that's clearly the outlier. It's the most yards per reception. It's the only time that he had 1,000 yards receiving. So that's the biggest concern is like, okay, we've seen one big fantasy season. He's not priced that high, though, right? So
no, he shouldn't be. Let me look.
Yeah, I don't think he is.
I just had him up the other day.
And we know at least with San Francisco, he got some opportunities on the ground. So
wide receiver 39.
Yeah, I actually thought he would be higher. I thought there might be some excitement for him. That's probably a fair price for him.
I think it is as well. And you know me, I might not necessarily just load up on Deebo Samuel shares, but there is a part of me where I do look back at last season and I say, okay, injuries, the team was down as a whole. Unfortunately, they just had so many injuries on that 49ers team last season. And then, I mean, really, like, mid-season pneumonia isn't good for anyone. So wide receiver 39 puts him in the same range as, like, Jerry Jeudy's going ahead of him. Chris Olave's going ahead of him. Chris Godwin's going. I would stop at Chris Godwin.
I would take all those guys ahead of him.
You would take all those guys ahead of Deebo Samuel?
Yeah.
Jerry and Chris? I would take Jerry. Maybe not Chris. I'm a little bit nervous about
injury?
Chris Olave. Yeah, the concussion.
I would still take Olave ahead of him. He's still the number one guy, even if the offense is not as good. Yeah, I would take Olave ahead of Deebo.
Jacoby Myers, Ricky Pearsall.
Pearsall's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring issue right now, so I would keep an eye on that. I might take Deebo ahead of them. I mean, I like Pearsall. A lot's going to depend on how much this injury affects him in training camp. I mean, we still got a ways to go, so he might be fine by then.
Listen, and this is all to say, like, Debo was not good last season. We all know that.
And
so
he had an opportunity with the injuries that before even the pneumonia stuff.
That was the disappointing part, is that he should have had the big season, because Brandon Ayuk went down, and you look around and you say, oh, perfect. Like, not perfect.
And
but
no McCaffrey either.
Exactly. But, he averaged 14.1 PPR points per game in weeks 1 through 6. So that was wide receiver 25. And then that was before the rib and illness issues. And then finished 9.4 PPR points per game, wide receiver 54 in weeks 8 to 17. It was horrible. I benched him, and I felt better for it. But I think
was probably one of the worst picks last year, right?
Oh, he had to have been. He wasn't cheap. It wasn't the top.
No, he was. Yeah, he was like the third, fourth round, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, especially with Ayuk dealing.
He was the third round for sure. Yeah. When it got time to come to me to draft him, he was one of the worst fantasy picks last season. There was no doubt. There was a point in time when you looked at the weeks 8 through 17 where you just benched him. You just couldn't continue on. And that's the hardest part. And we talk about this all the time, but it's hard to know. I mean, people hopefully did that with CJ Stroud, where it was really difficult because you look at the draft capital and you say, I spent too much on this guy and I don't have the pieces around me to be able to win. And hopefully they just go off, for a couple weeks while I play them. But Deebo Samuel, you probably won because you benched Deebo Samuel more than anything else.
It's easier to move on from a quarterback because usually there's a few guys on the waiver wire that emerge that you're like, okay, fine. It's much more difficult when you take a wide receiver in round 3 or 4, especially the caliber of Deebo Samuel, because you keep going, all right, it'll get better this week. And that's why you just have to look if there's injuries or a sickness and you see the performance. That's what the better players do. I think the one lesson you have to learn is draft capital means nothing, especially once the season starts, right? Even week 1. I know you want to be patient and, every scenario is different, but you might get a guy off the waiver wire after week 1 or draft someone around 12 and you go, okay, this is for real and they're going to become my guys. So, yeah, you were going to be patient with Deebo, but there had to have come a point last year where you go, all right, it's not happening. Forget about the draft capital. He's just not producing for my fantasy team, and I have to look elsewhere.
It was after the bye. It had to have been after the bye week, maybe week 10. This is ESPN scoring, by the way. But you had, after the bye in week 9, it was week 10, 12.6. And then here's the list. 6.1, 3.1, 4, 5.5, 4.9. Before, in week 16, scoring 25.1 fantasy points. That was brutal.
Really bad.
Horrible.
Did not have him last year.
I did.
I've had him on. Look, again, I like the player a lot. But when it comes to fantasy, he's really had one huge season. And now that he's older and on a new team. But I'm actually surprised at the ADP. I thought it would be higher. I thought there might be people out there that are pretty excited for him going to a new offense, an ascending offense with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. I actually thought, I'm surprised. I thought the ADP would be higher. So I guess people have done a good job.
Sharp people. Still in the 6th. I will say, like, wide receiver 39 is still a wide receiver going in the 6th round. Because
for an underdog, though.
Because they push them they push the wide receivers so high, but so far up the board. But, yeah, just something, I don't know, something to watch for. That's going to be one where I know we'll probably get a good amount of calls on Deebo and see where people are at with him for this season. Next up here in the water cooler, I just wanted to mention that Amon-Ra St. Brown did have a knee procedure. He is expected to be ready for training camp, but all this to say that this should not affect his availability for the season. Multiple reports came out that he had a cleanup offseason knee surgery, which is when those procedures are going to happen, and they expect him to be good to go during training camp. I mean, this is just one of these things, Adam, where we don't necessarily need to talk about how good Amon-Ra St. Brown is. Like, he's going in the 1st round. He's a top wide receiver pick in fantasy this season. He has been critical to their success. He's, had the first team all pros in each of the last 2 years. He's just so good. I think the conversation here really that I wanted to get into with you was more the Jared Goff situation. And I think people are finally coming to terms with Jared Goff was being drafted. He's going QB 12 on Underdog. And again, I just want to say, I do like Jared Goff. I do like this Lions offense, but I really feel like you were drafting Jared Goff at his absolute ceiling, and it's making me a little bit nervous. And I will say, in our projections, it's kind of the same thing. Where again, maybe you're looking to stack, and I know you've mentioned that before, Adam, where it's people trying to just stack Jared Goff and whoever else they can get. But I don't know, it's a little bit too high for me.
It's very high for me. There's no chance. And I think that is the only justification that I have, is that they're trying to stack for best ball, because this is not happening in redraft league. So maybe you got a St. Brown, Jameson Williams, or Laporta, and you go, all right, I want the Lions stack. But the bottom line is, we know what Jared Goff is. Last year, the touchdown percentage was 6.9%. His career is 4.8%. And even the 2 previous years, 5%, 4.9%. So let's put it in the 5% area. So we're looking at a guy that's going to throw 29, 30 touchdowns, and it's a new offensive coordinator, which it feels like we're not really worrying. We also think probably they're going to be involved in some shootouts as well. It's a tough division, but he threw 539 pass attempts last year. That's less than the 2 previous years, and he had more touchdowns. So we know what Goff is. He's not going to run. So there is no chance I take him at QB 12. He's not a target at all. And it has to be because of the stacks in best ball. Because I don't see this. When you start looking at redraft ADPs and other sites, there's no way he's going to be there. And a lot of it was boosted by like a massive game late in the year. Did he I think it was a 6 touchdown game, if I'm not mistaken, late in the year.
I remember that. Hang on.
Yeah. So we know what he is. He's not going to throw 30. He had a 5 touchdown game against Buffalo. 409. Oh yeah. Remember? I think that was crazy. They were behind 15. Early a lot, and they just passed like the entire way. It was like, I think it was like 35-14 at one point, and the Lions came back with 28 points in the second half, 21 in the fourth quarter. So, they were just passing. So it was great.
59.
Yeah, 59 pass attempts. Like, really, like how many game scripts is that happening for Detroit?
Yards. Yeah. Look at him on the ground. 2 carries for 13 yards. Who says he can't run?
Season high 13 rushing yards, I'm assuming?
No, he had 21 against Jacksonville week 11. So put some respect on Jared Goff's name. But I agree.
He's like that safe, boring quarterback. Yeah, in the right matchup, you want him, but you really don't want him on your redraft teams. There's just so many better quarterbacks with higher ceilings.
I'm looking too, and we love Baker Mayfield, but we're very open with saying that the touchdown regression is going to come. Yeah. There's just no way. And maybe he just looks at us and says, well, and that's not us doubting him either. He's still going to be he's a top 8 quarterback for us in our rankings right now. All that to say that he's still going to be good even with the touchdown regression, but we have to expect the same thing, passing touchdown regression for Jared Goff as well, at least in my mind, because he's coming off a career high 6.9%, and his average is 5% and 4.9%, 2023, 2022. So he gives you zeros in the run game, except, for the games where he gets, 12 and 22 yards. That's nothing though. So the path to that 22, 25 point upside that we want is a little bit more difficult, especially, and you mentioned it too, they play the second hardest schedule. They're tied for the second toughest schedule with the Chicago Bears, I believe. So that'll keep them in the games for sure. But Jared Goff, all that to say, you're still drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown and all these guys, but don't be surprised when you go into some of these underdog drafts and he's QB 12. I saw him in my draft on Saturday. He was drafted ahead of Bo Nix.
So I know you don't have access to it, but they have to have had 2 Detroit players from Laporta, St. Brown, and Williams. They have, otherwise I don't understand it. Unless you're someone that just goes by what you see in the queue and the ADP, and that's the worst thing to do. And always look at the ADPs and queues as well, because on different platforms it's vastly different. But the thing with Goff too is, you'll have some of those spike weeks. Obviously, the Buffalo game we just mentioned is the top outlier. He'll have a 4 touchdown game, a 3 touchdown game here, but he's also going to have games where he's throwing for 220 and 1 touchdown because they're so great on the ground. But it has to be. That's the only explanation that I have for him going that high in underdog, is stacking, because it's best ball.
And that's what this was. So it was Jahmyr Gibbs taken. This was a 102 pick. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams in the 4th, Joe Burrow in the 5th, and then comes back with Sam Laporta in the 6th, Jared Goff in the 8th.
That's why. I mean, it's easy.
Jared Goff going, yeah, but
it's
still,
easy.
Jared
It's
Goff
the easy. It's the only answer. Like, there's no way there's no way you could take Goff at QB12 and you have no one on Detroit. It makes no sense. I
just still think that's that's taking. He took him ahead of Justin Fields, Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy.
It's structural. I mean, again, you're just looking to hit that home run. You're hoping that you have a game late in the year where Detroit goes off. So I understand it from a structural standpoint, right?
Especially
and that's why
best ball.
Yeah, for best ball, like you're not gonna see, like, if you took Burrow, you're not taking Goff and redraft in that round. Yeah, it's a wasted pick.
Yeah, he's QB 15 for us at Fantasy Life, and I think I'm lower. I'm going to be lower than consensus. I'm QB 16.
Yeah, I'd have him lower than that too. Like, I'd take JJ McCarthy over him.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yes, I'd take Lawrence over him.
Dak Prescott. That's where I'm at. I'm taking Trevor. I'm not there with JJ.
I would take Dak over Goff, because if things break right for Dallas and Dak is healthy, he could get there.
I guess the other two, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, all ahead of him. Drake May, I know you said yes to already.
Yeah, I'd probably take.
I'm taking both of them ahead
of Goff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would too.
I think
Love is closer.
Line. I think I draw like some kind of line where it gets a little bit, more interesting for me is the Trevor Lawrence, JJ McCarthy range.
I would take both of them over Goff.
CJ Stroud? Is that your line?
A little lower. Okay. I'd take Goff over Stroud.
I'm trying to find where you stop, and I'm like, okay, with CJ Stroud, Tua Tagovailoa is probably that for you. Those two are our QB 19, QB 20 for us at FantasyLife.com. So, yeah, maybe I should just go draft a ton of Jared Goff and just stack him in best ball. That's what all the best ball bros are doing.
That's the only reason to do it. Like, once you said that the guy took Goff after Burrow, I'm like, there's no doubt he has at least 2 Lions targets. 3. With Gibbs too. Yeah, it has to be. That's the only way it makes sense.
Gibbs, Jameson, Laporta. Which,
I knew it.
It does make sense.
I didn't even need to see the roster. I knew it. If they didn't, then I'd say that guy is just
like this is our job or something. It's crazy. We're good. We got this. We're good to go. All right, that was FantasyLife.com. Again, that is where you can go and check out all of our articles that we've been talking about here today. The projections are over there. If you're really sick, we've got Week 1 projections, which is kind of fun, Adam, for June 8th here going on. But again, subscribe to that newsletter, 100% free. Fantasy Life Water Cooler. We've got little bit of a draft or pass ADP edition. We're gonna go through some of these ADPs, see who we would rather draft. We're gonna do that coming up here next. All right, fantasy football fans, sure, NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it, and all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change, and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us here today. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you on this Sunday. You've already played softball. So you done for the day? You just in for the day? You got your outdoor time? Or you go for a walk?
So my Sundays are like the crazy day because softball early in the morning, got this show. I will watch the Mets right after the show at 3 since they're on the road in Colorado. I will probably take another quick walk. Obviously, I got in some lot of running, playing softball. Yeah. Then, of course, 6 redraft fab leagues for fantasy baseball that are spaced out. First one runs at 8, 3 at 10, and then after. So I have to go through each one. And I told you I got that big NFBC league with my friend. So we get on the phone and usually chat for about an hour as we sort through the team.
Hour?
Yeah, usually about an hour, usually around 9, and then it runs at 10, and we kind of stay on the phone and see who we got, and then
that's crazy.
He goes to bed early, and then I stay up.
Well, early, that's a normal time. Like 10 p.m. Eastern is pretty healthy, pretty normal, and then you stay up till 1 a.m.
That is the crazy part. Like, you would think, okay, you wake up 7 a.m., you do all this stuff,
and play softball and walk and all that stuff.
I still go to bed like
issues.
Maybe 1 a.m. Eastern, the earliest, but more likely 2.
But you're right, though. That's because all the physical activity. It's just the softball. You had the softball games. You still walk. I would be in bed by 8. you would not see
look,
me.
I think you have to do that stuff, especially as you get older. It's also a mindset as well. So, look, I want to be, see, I'm a person that likes to travel. So, I want to be at an older age where I'm able to walk and get places and do things. So, it's important to take care of your health and be active, especially since we typically work at home. That was something I didn't realize. Someone pointed out to me years ago. They were like, let me see your phone. Wow, you don't take any steps, like you're dead. And I didn't think about it.
It's the worst.
I used to work in the city, even like going back when the channel started, I would go into the studio in the city. So you're walking, you're active. And then when you're home and you're just working all day, you don't think. So now I make it a point, and the goal is 10,000 steps a day.
Nice. You'd be proud of me. I've been doing 2 to 3 miles every day. I've been
That's
like, hey,
really good.
Got it. Because I mean,
you're
like
way younger than me, so you don't really need. But still, you do want to stay in as best shape as possible.
Well, there you go. I don't know how or why I got to that, and I have no good segue.
Because we help the public. That's true. Not only do we help you win your fantasy football league, life, staying healthy,
health, lifestyle. We'll talk about Folgers if you want. We talked about the
coffee,
buckets,
dating, marriage, whatever it is. We got you covered.
Oh man, I'm telling you, these cookies. I'll post a photo. The nachos, more specifically, last night at Angel Stadium, insane. It was actually kind of.
What were they, like $20?
Yeah, I think like $23. But it was gigantic. I think a family of 4 could have been.
Are their tickets affordable there?
Yeah. No one goes. There was no one there last night.
Is it that bad?
It was kind of sad. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of people there, and it was It was a fireworks night, so I thought
it would be more, right?
There'd be more. I got to see Trout. Haven't seen him playing.
At least he was active. Yeah,
exactly.
The Angels are in a rough spot.
Yeah, they're tough. They'll be selling at the deadline for sure.
As always,
they looked good against the Mariners. So what am I talking about? Chris Taylor looked like he was vintage Chris Taylor. It was awful. Anyway, I can't get into it. What are we doing? ADP, draft or pass.
Okay, let's go.
We're doing so draft or pass ADP edition presented here by Premier Sports. And again, this is we talked about Premier Sports a little bit in the break, but I just wanted to mention them again that if anyone listening is looking for this, trusted recruiting NIL resource, Premier National Sports is the team that will help you through that entire process. So we're going to talk here about Ashton Genty, Adam, and kind of talk about, where we would draft him. We can actually talk about him right now because I wanted to go Ashton Genty versus Jahmyr Gibbs because they're very close in ADPs, and I'm curious where you're at with him because Gibbs is coming off RB2 finish in both total points and points per game for 2024. I've mentioned before, if people are drafting him in this spot, if this ADP is based on maybe another David Montgomery injury, because to me David Montgomery, unless he goes down, is still getting the work. He is eating into that workload. Ashton Genty is a whole different conversation where he's coming into the league with these really high expectations. He has been named as the generational talent, and we know what happens when we have generational talent, heights to reach, and sometimes it's difficult. The Raiders don't necessarily have an amazing team, but he should get all of the opportunities. There's no one behind him where we say, oh, he might lose work to this player. It's going to be him and only him. Goal line, through the air, everything there. So I'm curious, between the two, Ashton Genty, Jahmyr Gibbs, who you would rather have.
It is Gibbs for me. Obviously, it comes down to where you pick, because if you're picking earlier, Gibbs is likely the guy you're going to take. Then again, you could take Genty if you believe in him. Here's the thing with Gibbs. I understand what you're saying with Montgomery, but Gibbs 2 years ago was an RB1. In fact, Gibbs and Montgomery with both RB1s. Now, that was also a year we had more running back injuries, whereas we didn't last year. But Gibbs was RB6 in points per game 2 years ago, and that's when he got off to a slow start. Do you remember? It seems like a long time ago when people were like, oh boy, I made a mistake. Why did I draft Gibbs? Because he wasn't really getting involved in the passing game to start the year. They had an early bye, and then we started to see him get more involved. Now, I would think that it does shift in the direction where Gibbs gets more this year compared to Montgomery. We saw down the stretch last year when Montgomery was out how great Gibbs was. And maybe Montgomery there helps a little bit too. You keep Gibbs fresh. He's more explosive. But he still has a massive ceiling, even with Montgomery there. So I still would take Gibbs. You prefer, obviously, Montgomery not being there. You saw the last 3 games, right? 28.4, 25.4, 26.3. So you would love to see that every week. We know those are not going to happen every time with Montgomery there, but I still think maybe they go more in the direction of Gibbs. He's just so explosive, and they had some lopsided games last year, and you mentioned the schedule being a little bit tougher, that maybe they don't have as many blowouts, and that means a little more opportunity for Gibbs. So I still would take Gibbs. It's very close, though. Like, if someone says, you want to take Genty, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about it.
I think I'll flip them back and forth, but you're right. It's very close for me. Jahmyr Gibbs RB3, and then Ashton Genty RB4. And then if you're in enough drafts, then you just flip them. Yeah, you're right. It just depends on where you go, but you have to have a top 9, 8 pick, depending on who's in your draft to get them, because they're not unless you're in my in that mock draft that I was able to get him in the second round, which was crazy. I don't know if people just kind of missed that or what, but
they just wanted to take receivers early.
Yeah, they just said receiver. But that's the thing. I'm like, yeah, usually I'm the same way, but if your draft is going to go a different direction,
that's the key. You could have if the problem is if 10 people have the same mentality, then you're going to get stuck with the bottom of the tier. Instead, all right, well, I'll take the running back. And if it means starting 2 running backs, you do it if the value falls your way, and then you adjust accordingly, even if it's not part of the plan. You always want to have a plan going in to a draft, and you can map it out. This happens all the time. It happens a lot in the high stakes leagues where you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then, oh, wow, this guy went here. This guy went here. Okay, cool. This guy's going to fall to me. I didn't expect him to be here. I'm going to take him. So the key to successful drafting is just adjusting to what's going on around you. And again, you can come in with, okay, this is my plan, but there's always going to be people that will surprise you with the pick, and you just got to be ready to go, okay, well, I'm going to change my plan now because I did not foresee that happening.
Exactly. And that's why I think, I'm with you. I think more on Gibbs at this very moment. Like, I know that David Montgomery is still there, but when you look at it too, like he is the primary passing option on passing downs. David Montgomery dominated those goal-to-go situations. We can look at the stats. According to PFF, Montgomery 29 goal-to-go carries during the regular season. Gibbs had 22, despite the games played and everything, the lack of games played there for David Montgomery when he got hurt. So I'm with you there. Again, Las Vegas too is just a worse offense, and I don't necessarily think that means that Ashton Genty is going to come down at all. They ranked 23rd in red zone plays, 29th in red zone run rate last season. So they can improve, but they have the player. That's the one thing. They have the player to do it. They're just going to they've given Ashton Genty the keys to the city, and they're just going to say, hey, here you go. Like, he can help them win games. And I know people might be off on Geno Smith. He's also been one of my favorite quarterbacks to get late. We're talking underdog right now because we're not necessarily drafting on, those ESPN Yahoo leagues. But he's been one of my favorite. He's an accurate passer. And so I'm still in on getting him, maybe a late Jacoby Myers if you're able to get Brock Bowers early. Like, it's still a team that I'm kind of not necessarily excited, but I'll target him as a late round quarterback. I'm okay with it.
Cheap. The other thing to keep in mind too, so I know it's different when you're talking best ball, if you're playing in this big tournament where you want the highest upside, but the thing with Gibbs, the floor is high. His worst game last year in PPR was 12 points. So you're getting production every single week. Especially if you're just like in a home league or just a redraft league where there's no overall, like, you're getting a high floor. Now, maybe you're shooting for a higher ceiling in a tournament, basketball tournament, then maybe you say, well, because Montgomery's there, Genty is going to get more volume, and maybe that's how you decided. And the other factor, the same thing you were alluding to earlier, is if you're doing a lot of these leagues, and maybe you did 3 or 4 and you have Genty, you do want to switch it up. Like, the first round, the early rounds is where you want to be a little bit different, because if you have that same one player and they go down, now you're in trouble in multiple leagues. It is the worst. You just want to sprinkle. If you're listening, and people probably listening to us in June or doing a ton of drafts, so they kind of know, but just always sprinkle it. It's just even I think our best advice last year, especially coming from you, was when people had the 101 pick, and it was like, hopefully you didn't take Christian McCaffrey every single time, and that's a perfect example of why, if you're in a lot of drafts, if you're in more drafts than the normal person, you want to make sure that you kind of
diversify your portfolio a little bit. And, people might look at it if they're in that draft and say, wow, I can't believe that someone took, Bijan Robinson ahead of Christian McCaffrey. I can't believe someone took, I don't know, Jamar Chase 101 last season.
And it was the right call.
It was the right call. And that's why it's important. If you're doing a ton of drafts, you get the, 101, 102, whatever pick multiple times, like just make sure you diversify a little bit. But yeah, listen, and here's the thing with Jahmyr Gibbs, like he's proven even in like a situation where it's a shared role, he's elite, Adam. That's the other thing. Like, that's why I always have to look back and say, okay, David Montgomery's there. And I'm like, yeah, but he's been there and he's still been able to produce for us. So that's always interesting when you look at some of the ADP battles and you say, all right, who's going to go where, who's going to like who. But that was, again, Draft or Pass ADP edition. And that was presented by Premier Sports. Again, want to let everyone know, if anyone is looking for a super trusted recruiting and NIL resource, Premier National Sports. We've talked about them throughout the show. They're the team that can help you through that entire process. They have personalized recruiting strategies, and just as important, they have NIL education. So if you're interested, again, Premier National Sports, make sure you go and check them out. I want to talk a little bit of wide receivers. I've got my wide receiver rankings out, Adam. Want to see if we're in line with some of them and maybe some wide receiver sleepers for 2025 as well. We're going to go through those names coming up next. All right. Happy Sunday. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us as always. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis here with you, talking through fantasy football for 2025, going through some wide receiver rankings as well. I didn't hit this in the water cooler, Adam, but I did want to mention, I guess I missed it, but there's trade chatter for Chris Olave. Have you seen that? Kellen Moore said, don't worry about it. People, the quote was, people want good players. Love that. Go Kellen. Go Kellen Moore.
Look, if you've drafted Olave already, you probably would like to see that, depending on the landing spot. But again,
he's the hardest for me to. I've had such a hard time in the rankings to figure out where I actually want him.
I think right around 30 would be the proper area, and I'm open to taking him. I know the risk with the. So what worries you more, the concussion history or the state of the offense?
No, I think the concussions more than anything else, right? And that's the one thing where it's like you can't plan that. So you should really base your rank, and like Derek Carr is gone. So that was the one thing last year where it just felt like there were a couple hospital balls thrown his way, and it just did not land correctly. But I agree with you though. Wide receiver 30, I think I have him right there, 31. So yeah. It's just one of those things where I don't know if I'm going to be drafting him, though. If it comes my way.
It sounds like you're not.
If he comes my way and it's Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, I'm going to be honest. I'll probably go Jalen Waddle.
Oh, your guy Waddle. You're back.
Cortland Sutton, Chris Olave.
Back from where? I mean, Sutton, I would take over him, over Olave.
Not Waddle.
No, I think I would take Olave.
Calvin Ridley.
That's closer.
Yeah, that's where it. Like Calvin Ridley, George Pickens areas where I get a little bit like, oh, I might go with them instead. Just
okay. I mean, look, yeah, you just feel more confident of those players.
I'm just a little nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky because you know what's going to happen if you take Olave and he has a good year. You're gonna be like, yeah, I knew it, and then. Or you take him and then early in the season takes that hit. You're like, I should have known. Like you said, it's the same thing with injuries. We sit here, we try to predict them, and it could happen to any player. I mean, we saw last year it was so many wide receivers that went down, running back stayed healthy. So, but yeah, I guess there is more risk with Olave just because of the history. Because if he gets one concussion early, then they're going to be so cautious. They shut him down last year.
Yeah, it's just you want to be so careful. That health matters more than anything, especially like looking at him and how many concussions that he's had. So it's one of those. He's one of those guys where I look at it, and even if he does come to me like his regular ADP, I'm sometimes just like,
you're not taking him. I can tell already.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where once we really start, in July and we're 5 days a week and we're asked, I think I'm going to put foot down, just like you with Christian McCaffrey last year. And you're still out on him.
It's good to know. So if I'm picking, and if I'm in a draft with you and I'm picking 11 and you have 12 and I want Olave, I'm like, look, she's going to pass on him. So I will take someone else. And then when you'll pass on him.
Scatterboo, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It'll just break my heart.
There we go. So fine. I can go Scatterboo, then come back and get Olave because I know you're going to pass it on. But fine. You know what? Look, It is good to know that information. I mean, it sucks when you work with people and you work with a lot of different people and do shows on Fantasy Life. So, like, you're going to know what everyone thinks. They know what you think. So when you're in a draft with them, it's kind of difficult because you feel like, oh, I know I can get this guy. Oh, no, they're picking next to me. And they might just do it to spite me, or maybe they have the same sentiment. So it can be difficult.
That's why it would have been fun in GST last season if we were in the same league, because that would have been. I mean, we spend a lot of time together, and then it's just like, oh, there's Tyrone. I would have been like, Ani, there's Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah.
We should probably get him before Adam gets him.
I did not get Tracy in that league last year. No.
That was tough. I'm excited for that.
See, again, that's the benefits of drafting a little bit earlier. A lot of those leagues, it was late July, early August, where I was able to get them, and then things change and the price goes up. So.
Brian Thomas Jr. is the one that we know how good he is. I'm actually higher than consensus on him. Wide receiver 4 for me. And again, this can change in the next few months and stuff. We always go in and out of our rankings, but wide receiver 4 consensus, wide receiver 7. I don't know, Adam. I look at Brian Thomas Jr. and I say, everything got better for him in the offseason. And it might be more of a thing where I am just a little bit more worried about Russell Wilson with Malik Neighbors. And that could just be that. Because, again, I have Brian Thomas Jr., and then I have Puka Nacua, and then I have Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 6, consensus wide receiver 5 there. So I might just be a little bit worried on Russell Wilson. But for Brian Thomas Jr., and maybe I'm putting a lot of stock into Trevor Lawrence being better. That's going to be the thing that either kills you or makes this pick do really well, because I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, Trevor Lawrence coming back healthy. Then you have Liam Cohen there as an offensive minded, the new head coach. And you're kind of like, okay, this hopefully could work in a way where he helped or continue to help Baker Mayfield get good. 2024 Buccaneers ranked 3rd in passing yards per game. Baker Mayfield's yards per pass attempt rose from 7.5 to 8.1. So all this to say, I'm hoping that Trevor Lawrence is good, because that's how this works out. And if it doesn't, then yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. might not pay off that wide receiver 4 price tag.
I don't even think we need Lawrence to be great. We just need him to be average and get the ball to Thomas. Because again, a lot of the production that Thomas had was with Mac Jones last year, right?
Exactly.
Like his best stretch was like the last 6 games where he got double-digit targets in every game. But I think it was also Thomas, a rookie, first few games coming in. And he had some big games in there. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns in the first 5 games. I forgot what week Lawrence got injured off the top of my head. But, yeah, I agree with you. I like Thomas a lot. I had him if you had Thomas last year, life was just great, because he was like an 8th-round pick. I had him in the GST. Like, that really helped me. I think it was like round 8. So, yeah, you do have to pay a much higher price tag. That's the thing. I think those receivers, those 3 you mentioned, like, I feel like if you ask 3 people, each person will have a different order. One might go Thomas, Neighbors, Puka. Someone might go Neighbors, Thomas, Puka. Someone might go Neighbors, Puka, Thomas. So yeah, that's kind of personal preference there. I do think it's different for multiple people.
For sure. And that's why rankings, like when we talk about them, it all comes, that's an opinion. It's all personal preference. And that's why it's, fun and good, probably, if you can look at, people, analysts that you trust, go and look at their rankings, make some of your own. It always makes you I sit down at them, and then I go into an underdog draft and I say, I need to change this, because I did not stick. I thought one way, now I'm in a draft and it's a pressure situation and I've changed my mind. I actually want to go with this guy. But yeah, it's, again, we know how good that he is going to be, Brian Thomas Jr., and it's just one of those things where it comes down to preference. But I, in my original set of rankings right now, really like him as my wide receiver 4. Again, consensus wide receiver 7 at fantasylife.com. Not to say I don't like Puka, not to say I don't like Malik, but I like him just a little bit more than those guys. We've got some more names that I want to go through, though, outside of the top 12, because that's when it starts to get really interesting. Where should we have Devontae Adams? Are you still drafting Tyreek Hill? We're going to go through that coming up next. We've got you covered. The Folgers coffee right next to me has you covered, Adam. It's perfect. FantasyLife.com has you covered. We have you covered. What are we doing? Fantasy football 2025.
Hell yeah, get you ready. Laying down the groundwork now. Get those championships.
We're about to go we're going to go 5 days a week soon here again. Like, it's going to be time. The off season, we always are, we ended in February, but then it's just and then came to one day a week Sundays, but it went by fast. Like, it's almost July. That's crazy.
It is. Time does fly. You say it's almost July. It's June 8th. Like we still have like.
To me, it's almost July. You know, a month away.
Guess.
Little less than a month away. It's almost July. Once it's after the 5th, I'm like, that's how I tell time too, and people hate it. It'll be like 11:32. I'll be like, it's almost noon. We gotta go, and then they're like, no, it's not. It's actually 11:30.
Yeah, I guess you just anticipate things quicker than most.
Look ahead. You gotta always have your eyes up and ready to go. Let's talk on the wide receiver, just the wide receiver rankings in general. FantasyLife.com had Ladd McConkey wide receiver 11, which was right in line with the consensus. Put T in the top 12. Put T wide receiver 12, consensus wide receiver 14. That's one where I could see myself changing that one a little bit. We've got at fantasylife.com with all our other rankers, Tyreek Hill is wide receiver 12. Which one are you drafting Tyreek Hill? Are you nervous about him at all? Or
yeah, so
the offense?
Yeah, he's a tough one right now. I'd put him lower than 12. The key is here, like how much was the hand an issue last year? We did see that offense change, though, so much that it was so much Achane and Jonnu Smith. Can Tyreek bounce back? Yes. He's also 31, reliant on speed. I mean, we saw a big drop-off last year, so I'd have him lower than 12. So I'd probably be below the market here, where I do have some concerns with Tyreek Hill right now.
I've got him at 15.
Yeah,
right now, just in my initial set of rankings.
I'd have him more in that area.
I'm with you. I'm worried.
And he could burn us. He could burn us.
Oh, for sure. Because it's Tyreek Hill. So that's why I say to myself, I can see him creeping closer to the top 12 once we get through training camp and once we get through these next few months where we see it, where they say it, and they say, hey, there was really a wrist injury last season that happened early in the year that they told us after the season ended that was bothering him the whole year, like they always do. You know, hey, this was an issue all season, but we didn't tell you. So that's the thing, like initial set of rankings right now, wide receiver 15, but it's still Tyreek Hill. Like he is still, I still think he's an elite player, where it's not like we talk about some of these other guys where we say, oh, their best years are behind him. Like I still think he can outperform those ADPs that we give him. So he's the one right now where I'm just like, and they just funneled so much through Jonnu Smith. Achane is always going to be involved like that. But if Tua goes down again, is that what they're
that's the other big issue too. Like, even with especially with Achane, we saw Achane huge difference with Tua without. Again, Tyreek Hill had 170 and 171 targets his first 2 years in Miami, dropped down to 123 last year. So it really was just the volume and the structure of the offense. So if you believe it's going to change and that the wrist injury was the big factor, then you could get a big bounce back season.
Tua needs to stay healthy. What are we doing? It's just disappointing, I guess is the only way to put it. And that Super Bowl window's closed. Like I thought Tyreek Hill was going to get traded, to be honest. I was surprised that he didn't.
I thought there was a good chance as well.
Yeah. Oh, tennis just ended. That's crazy.
Oh, there we go.
Wow. What a comeback. All right, there we go. FantasyLife.com. We talk baseball, tennis. We've got you covered everywhere, but especially at FantasyLife.com for all your fantasy football info that you need. Appreciate everyone hanging out. We'll see you here next time.